Hey,
Hi.
how's it going, everyone?
Any luck?
No, so GCU technical support didn't help. So I got a email in my GCU tech support or in my GCU email account that said that got an invitation from Zoom. I didn't even know it was in there. Is that what you went to, Jesse?
Yeah,
See, I didn't even know there was one in there.
right.
So I got on and they said they couldn't really help me. So I have to contact Zoom.
Okay.
So I need to get that fixed because it might kick us off. So if this, why is Raven muted? Unmute Raven. Well, for some reason she's muted. I don't know why it's doing this, but for some reason it won't let me be pro because I even clicked the link.
Right.
I even clicked the link and it wouldn't. It went back and made me sign in on Facebook, and I did, and it still said basic plan.
Right. Okay.
Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Since if this cuts us off after 40 minutes, Raven, did you end up getting basic plan or are you on pro?
I'm not sure. Let me see. I'm on basic.
Okay, so Raven and I both will have to do this. So Raven, apparently if you're on basic, it shuts you off after 40 minutes.
Is everybody not on basic?
No, we're Jesse's on pro. Stephanie, what are you on?
What do you even know?
Go to your profile. Go to your profile and it will show you it will show you if you're on basic or pro.
I don't even see where I'm looking at.
So it'll show you your profile in the top right corner.
Okay. Maybe I'm just.
So go in the top right corner, click on yourself, and it will show you basic, or it will show you your profile info. If you're on basic, then we all are going to have to fix it this week.
It says
we're all going to have to fix it.
It doesn't say pro or basic. It just says Stephanie Faust.
Okay, so go under your profile. It will list your profile ID. It will list several other things. And it
Probably have to scroll down.
Audio.
Yeah, you got to scroll down. Your basic
video. That's all.
Go. You don't know? It won't show you?
It doesn't say. It says stop video, mute my audio, pin video, rename.
No, that's on what you're at. You should have a profile in the top right corner, like Stephanie Faust, and then go click under it, and it will show your profile. Because Jesse and Yolanda both are pro. Raven and I are both basic. Raven, did you sign in from GCU from the email they gave you, or did you just get on and start a profile?
I didn't get an email from GCU about Zoom.
You did if you check on, apparently, so I never checked my email on the portal. I didn't even know I had email on the portal till just a minute ago. If you go on your portal and check email, it shows you.
What do you mean, like log in where it says my apps?
Yeah, go to your
portal,
go to the email and portal. It should show that, and it'll give you an invitation to Zoom. But I mean, I tried it now and it doesn't. Mine still doesn't work. Mine still showed me basic. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to start this session, and if it kicks me off after 40 minutes, check the session or check the group forum. I'm going to do my best to get in touch with Zoom and everything, and we may end up having to do a meeting later tonight. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah.
Stephanie, Raven, you guys are cool?
It would depend on the time for me.
Okay.
I don't know about anybody else. But I'm on basic too, so
You're on basic. We don't know
let
what
me see.
Stephanie's on. So, hey, Yolanda, again.
Mine's
back.
syncing to my work, who has a Zoom account. So I think mine's just like trying to do something funky.
Okay, so I'm going to get on and we're going to try this and we'll see how it goes. If it shuts us off, be checking the group forum because I'll repost the time and we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Just be checking within the next 30, 45 minutes because Yolanda, GCU tech support wasn't much help. They said I would have to go through Zoom.
No.
So I don't know. I didn't use this for counseling skills. I never knew I could use this for counseling skills. So
We had to. It was a part of our grade.
see, we didn't have to. So okay. I'm just gonna start and if it kicks us off, it kicks us off and just check the forum.
Okay, will do.
Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. We'll figure it out if we get kicked off. I apologize for not being tech savvy and not having all the information. So I wanted to introduce us all again. I want us all to kind of go around, say who we are, where we're from, give a little bit of basic info, and then I'm going to kind of go over a few things to start the meeting, and then we'll kind of get right into it. So I'm going to start. I'm Frank Collier. I live in Sacramento, California. I am currently a youth pastor at Cordova Church of Christ, and I have 2 children, 3 and 5, and they are a handful. Stephanie, you're next on mine, so your turn.
Okay, I live in Arizona, in Gilbert, Arizona. I also work at a church. I'm a preschool coordinator. So I understand about your little ones because I work with them all day long. I'm a single mom, and so I'm very busy. So that's about it.
Jesse?
My name is Jesse Gardner. I live in Las Vegas, Nevada. Gonna be 38 years old next week. A construction worker. Been married for 17 years. I have 4 kids, and I'm at 4 and no more. So.
Okay. Raven?
My name is Raven Hunter. I'm 25 years old. I work for the Department of Children's Services as an investigator. I live in Memphis, Tennessee, and that's about it. I'm planning a wedding. That's the only interesting thing about me I can think of.
Okay. Last but not least.
Hi, my name is Yolanda Redding. I live in Griffin, Georgia, which is 45 minutes from Atlanta. I am a financial analyst at Panasonic. I've been working there for probably about a year, but I've been working in accounting for roughly over 20 years. So I'm venturing into something new.
Okay. So before we really dive in, I wanted to go over our rules and a couple of other things just to kind of set the groundwork. I chose to go first. Hopefully I don't get judged too harsh on that because we're still kind of figuring all this out as evidenced by all the stuff with Zoom. Let me go over the rules we talked about last week when we met. So our first one is all members of the group should do their best to be on time to the meeting, which we obviously all are. Good job. You guys accomplished the first rule of the meeting. Number 2, notification of meeting and invitation to the meeting should be sent out before Friday at midnight. I did that. You all got in, so hey, there we go. I know Jesse had some issues on his computer, but clearly got in.
I'm here. I made it. I'm here.
Okay, so be respectful of other group members when they're sharing. This includes not interrupting. Number 4 is all group members will make an effort to bring something of meaningful substance to the group and fully participate in the meetings. And then number 5 is all group members will make an attempt to stay on topic and be open to redirection from the group leader if needed. So those are our basic meetings or our basic rules. We all settled on those last time. I did want to go over one of the things that it said on our sheet that we had to sign. Confidentiality is important in this. I know that some of the topics we get into may not be too super deep, but we still need to have some confidentiality. And I mean, for us living different states, I don't feel like that's going to be too hard. But again, we are simulating a group counseling setting. So with confidentiality, we're not going to say things that are said in this group to outside people. That's one of the basic rules of this group. And though it's not on our list, it kind of overruns the whole thing. So if all that is said, since all that is understood, I wanted to introduce our topic and talk a little bit about why I personally chose to do this one first. So our topic is dealing with conflict. And I think that this topic is important because in everything we do, there will inevitably be conflict. No matter what we do in, construction work with Jesse or Yolanda in accounting, definitely in churches, definitely in CPS, there is conflict. And for me, this one really kind of hit home because my ministry, my current job, I had a lot of conflict my first year or two, and I was not great at handling conflict, and still have, though I've gotten better and I've kind of really settled into that, I still have some tendencies within myself to want to shy away from conflict instead of facing it. So for me, this was very important. And I think that today, after our session, some of these things that we're going to talk about will help us to deal with conflict when it does inevitably arise. So to get us prepared more about how we, to explore how we deal with conflict, I wanted to ask a question. If you had to rate yourself from 1 to 10 on how you deal with conflict, with 1 being horribly, I'm awful at dealing with conflict, and 10 be like, everybody's happy, everything's great all the time, I always get things settled, where would you rate yourself and why?
Okay, I'll start. I'll rate myself probably at a 6. And the reason why I say that is because I try to avoid conflict at all costs, because I often feel that people that I'm dealing with, they're not there to solve the problem. They're there to vent. And sometimes when I feel like people are venting, I feel like it doesn't bring this equilibrium that I'm looking for. So I just, I kind of like turn into a little shell and just go on my little way. I was like, okay, I'm like, let's agree to disagree and move on.
So
but I know.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
But I know that doesn't solve the problem. But I would rather solve the problem rather than just sit there and just talk about something that may not even involve the problem at all.
Yeah. So why do you feel like you tend to shy away?
Because I'll give you an example. I had a situation to happen at work one day, and I heard my coworker. I listened to her, but when she wasn't open to listening to me, then that made the situation problematic, because we both had ideas about a situation that we wanted to get resolved, but we still never got it resolved. But my ideals was just my ideals were frowned upon. So at that point, I was like, you know what? I don't want to deal with this right now.
So you had like differing views of what you both wanted from the conflict.
Right. And yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And still didn't
That's
get resolved.
understandable. I get that. Okay. Who else? If you felt like what do you feel like you rate yourself? And by the way, if you guys want to ask other people a question, so like Jesse, if you wanted to say something to Yolanda about that or help her explain the feelings too. Yes, I am the group facilitator, but you guys feel free to ask questions to each other on some of these things if you need more clarity as well.
Yeah, I feel like that, like what Yolanda said, a lot at work. There's a lot of work conflicts that, to me, really aren't solvable. And so I kind of get into the position where it's like most of this stuff isn't even worth me expressing my opinion, because it's not going to fix anything. So, and a lot of construction has to do with like usually the person who talks the loudest wins, because just deal with people that aren't, tend not to be very good natured or educated well, or even, have good behavior. But as far as conflict goes, I would probably rate myself at a 3. I think that most of the time I'm awful with it, because I have a tendency to respond to things that like aren't the real problem, or oftentimes I'll leave, doing the whole thing, like reenacting the argument in my head. I should have said this. I should have said that. I didn't say this. And I'm either like really awful or I'm like really awesome. I think I'm really inconsistent. I think I'm really inconsistent with my confrontation skills, or dealing with conflict. I don't like it at all. In most cases, I would rather just get mistreated by someone, like verbally or otherwise, than to get into a conflict with them, because I don't like it. And I think that's part of the reason why I don't deal with it well, because if I get pushed into it, or I feel like I'm getting forced into a conflict that I don't want to be in, that affects the way that I treat people or talk to them. So if I'm mad because you're forcing me into a conflict that I don't want to be in, I'm most likely gonna mistreat you or be rude, or take it somewhere that's gonna be really unproductive for me and whoever that person is. So that's the bad side. On the good side, sometimes I just handle it really well, and I'm like, okay, good, we got something fixed and everyone's happy. But it's not, I don't do that as often as I would like to or should.
So you said some of your problems you feel like in construction are unsolvable. What does that mean? I don't know if I've run across many problems that are unsolvable.
Just people being jerks, people in other people's way, people going out of sequence, and they don't want to. It's just like a tough guy contest. You know what I mean? Like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm not going to move because this is what I'm doing. And
they're not actual conflicts, they're ego.
Well, I think that, yeah, it's more of an ego conflict. Yeah, that's
okay. Anybody else?
If I could rate myself, I guess I would say it would depend on the setting. It's weird because I was talking to my mom about this at this meeting that we had for the wedding yesterday. It seems like my fiance can get me so upset and press the right button, but at work or with school or something, I'm not nearly as worried as I am if he upsets me. So I think that it depends on the kind of relationship and the kind of setting that I'm in. Like at work, I would say resolving conflict for me is pretty easy because there's always that chain of command. So I would rate myself at probably like an 8, because if I can't get what I need from, let's say, my immediate supervisor, I know who the next person is to go to, or the person to blind copy or CC on the email to help me with whatever it is I feel like I'm not getting. If my supervisor, my direct supervisor, can't do it. But in personal relationships, when there's more emotion involved and where they, I guess, weigh more on my life, I think it's easier for me to be a good, I don't know, 6 or 5 on a given day depending on what the topic is and how strongly I feel about it when it comes to resolving the conflict.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think there is a sense of it depends on the situation. I think that's the way it kind of is with everybody. I know you said you work for Child Protective Services, and so you guys get yelled at a lot, I'm sure. And
We do.
I mean, like I said when we met earlier, my wife is Child Protective Services, and you got to be like made of steel to work for CPS because you'll get yelled at all the time. You'll get your name dragged through the mud. So I can see how you would say, you know, an 8 professionally and then different in your personal life. So yeah,
Yes.
I think you're right. I think there's some distinction there, but you know, I'm trying to get a feel overall for how everybody is. And I'm kind of surprised by that, and I'll tell you why in a minute. Stephanie?
So I would rate myself like at a 4, though my value of conflict is more towards like a 9 or 10. I value conflict because I think it's important for growth, though I don't do it well for the fact that I process very slowly. So I tend to hold things inside and really just kind of mull over it and see like where, like, is this an emotional response that I'm having, or is this a warranted response? And then I'll like go to a mentor and ask the mentor, like, how should I be responding to this? And so it'll take me a week to kind of get to, or longer even, to get to the confrontation. And then the person will be like, I don't even remember what you're talking about. So I'm like, it's over. The moment's over. We're done with the conflict. Like it doesn't even matter anymore. So if I'm faster to respond and process through the moment, then the conflict would be more purposeful. But
yeah, you know, you and I share a little bit in common in that we both work in a church. So how do you feel about conflict within the church? Do you have a lot of people that really kind of, I guess, stir up stuff about when they disagree with you or something like that?
there's a lot of like holy conflict. And I know you know what that means. It's like, well, you should be doing this because it's.
I know exactly what you mean.
I'm trying to explain it in like a way that is, I don't know exactly how to explain it. Like, well, this is supposed to be X, Y, and Z because it's in the Bible and God says it. And it becomes like this gossipy thing that's not really appropriate. But as a church, you know, as a someone who works in the church, I can't really exactly confront people in a way that's appropriate on the spot until I've talked to, you know, this pastor and all these things. So it's really tricky on how to confront people with grace and love and, you know, all of those things.
Okay, so what would you rate yourself? Did you already say that?
I think I'm probably like at a 4.
You said a 4, that's right.
So long to process all the angles.
That's right.
You know.
Yeah, so for me, a little bit of, I guess, self-disclosure for me, I would probably rate myself definitely better than I used to be. I'd probably rate myself at a 5 or so. I used to, my first couple of years, be a 2 or a 3. And it's because I took a lot of things personally. If someone had a problem, I took it as, you know, they think this about me personally. They think I'm a terrible person. And I was very paranoid about my job. And so, you know, I was afraid enough people were going to complain, and they were going to complain to my elders, and I was going to lose my job and all this stuff. And so, I don't feel like I was very great at conflict, and I'm very kind of surprised to hear everybody's answers because I felt like I was the only one that was not good at conflict. So I don't feel alone. I don't feel in the same boat as all of you guys. Or I mean, I do feel in the same boat as all of you guys. I felt like you would all be much better than me because as a pastor, I don't always feel like I can share how I truly believe about things. So before we get into talking directly about conflict, I wanted to ask, do any of you have any questions for each other, or is there anything you wanted to address that someone else said?
No.
No? Okay, so I wanted to also just talk about a few things now that we've kind of gotten a little bit of a warm-up going on. I wanted to kind of tell you guys a few things we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about the origins of conflict. We'll be actually discussing some situations of conflict. We'll be talking about some tools. And then we will finish up with some applications, like some applications we can make with conflict. So before we really get into handling situations of conflict, I wanted us to kind of talk about some of the origins of our conflict. There are a number of situations for, I think, all of us that lead to conflict. I mean, everybody, anything can lead to conflict, right? As simple as how to load a dishwasher, or how to, I don't know, do anything properly. That's, people can have their own opinions and it can lead to conflict. But I wanted to ask, so that we can explore this more fully, what situations do you guys find yourselves getting into the most conflict in? So I'll give you an example for myself, and then we'll explore this a little more. So I'm a youth pastor, and I tend to get into conflict when I'm teaching something to the teenagers that their parents disagree with, that I see as something of a gray area, and their parents see as more of a black and white area. So situations like that are what I'm talking about. What situations do you guys find yourselves having the most conflict in?
I think, like I said earlier, I'm pretty positive the most conflict for me comes from situations with me and, I don't want to necessarily say people that I love, but in those more intimate relationships where people have more power to, what I feel like is, hurt me or do wrong by me, and the conflict comes in when I try to control it and stop that, or when I have the wrong idea about what they're doing because I'm looking at it in a different way or something like that. That's where majority of, I think, my conflict comes from.
Yeah, do you feel like it's more difficult to deal with conflict with people that you care about or people you are in a relationship with than those that you just see on a casual basis?
Most definitely. I think the people that I work with are people that I work with. It's strictly business. So I'm not connected spiritually to my, well, I'm connected spiritually to my work, but it's not like a ministry like what you do every day. It's like, I'm here to do a job. These are the steps that I have to do the job. These are the policies that I have to follow by state law. So my emotions are not as involved. Whereas in a more intimate relationship, is fully emotion. That's all it's based on, is emotion, because I'm strictly involved with these people, or these people are involved in my life because we care for one another and we want to be involved. Whereas at work, I'm there for a reason. Something happened, or there's an issue that needs to be resolved for custody to be, given back, or whatever the case. I'm there to get something done.
Okay. Yeah, I definitely get the sense there, because I feel that way too. I know when I have a conflict with my wife or with my family, it's a lot more difficult for me to handle that one correctly than it is with other people.
I think I'm more inclined to engage in conflict with people that I'm closer to than work. Oh, I just got a message, but so I think like with my mom or my sisters or anything, I'm more inclined to readily engage in conflict and kind of work it out than with, you know, my boss or my colleagues. I'm a little like more trepidatious with them because I just don't really know if I'll have full forgiveness, I guess, from them.
Okay. So you feel like you're the opposite of Raven? Is that what you're saying?
I guess, yeah, because I feel like with my sister and my mom and my brother, I know at the end of the day they will forgive me if I step up or if I mess up in some way. If I say something that I don't mean, if we engage in conflict that gets heated, at the end of the day they're still gonna love me. They're gonna forgive me. We'll always be family. Whereas at work, if I say something wrong, you know, they may hold that against me forever.
Okay.
And my family.
Yeah. So it seems like you and Raven have two different kind of conflicting views there, but they're not necessarily conflicting, but two different viewpoints. And that's definitely interesting because I think I think a lot of it does depend on the situation and who it is, but I definitely can see both perspectives for sure.
I think that as far as conflict goes, when you have the most potential for conflict is in relationships where you have like competing wills, or like people that are like you're dependent on people, like would be family, my kids, or something like that, where you're working to meet other people's needs, but then you want to have your needs met too. And I think that that's where a lot of the conflict comes from, is they're like everyone has needs, so it's like, well, you're not meeting my needs, or I want you to meet mine. I'm not meeting your needs the way that I'm supposed to. And I think that that's where a lot of that conflict can come from. It's like who's not necessarily who's more important, but what are the biggest needs and how do you meet them?
So that's a good point, Jesse. You said something about like your conflicts, you would rather be, you feel like you're a 3 because you would rather be taken advantage of or just not get into conflict. Do you feel like you're that way with your close relationships, like with your family and friends,
Yeah.
as opposed to at work?
Yeah, absolutely. No, I have like, when I go to work, like I have no soul. I don't have feelings. I don't care. Like, no, nothing. Like, it doesn't help to have feelings. So like I like what Raven said. Yeah, when I'm there to do a job, there's no feelings involved in it. I'm here to do X, Y, Z, and I'm going to do whatever I have to get those things done. So there's very little emotional energy put into those things. And for me, like if I were to handle a conflict negatively, that's because it would be an emotional situation for me, where I'm afraid or where I'm angry, or where I'm worried that my needs aren't going to be met or something like that. So I usually don't have problems at work at all. Even if I'm really upset or mad or something, I can hold myself together at work a lot more than I would at home.
So Stephanie, he said something about not connecting emotionally with work. How do you feel about that working in a church?
It's like the polar opposite. Our every day is 100% about making connections with people and being as emotionally available to your families, and basically kind of bearing your soul and being able to be there 100% for every single person that comes through the room, and kind of knowing every type of situation that's going on, knowing if your families are, on the brink of divorce, if they're going through the mourning, if they're, kind of like being able to discern which emotional state they're in. And like on Sundays right now, it's like exhausting. So at the end of the day, you're like, I have been through an emotional storm, you know? So that like emotional soulless thing does not happen. Like,
Yeah, I can see your reaction when he said the soulless thing.
like
I
what?
was very much wondering what you were thinking about that, because I felt the same thing. I can't be that way at work. And
Nope.
I honestly, in some ways, Jesse, I do kind of envy that.
Yeah.
I wish that I could in this job just do the job and then have family over here that I put my heart and soul into, but I can't, and that is hard. And so I think Stephanie may feel this way too. It seems like she feels like that's just impossible.
Mm-hmm.
I
And
think that it's a lot about balance, because when you say somebody is working for CPS, you think, oh, they really love children, or they must have a good heart to do it, and all that stuff is true. But if I was too emotionally invested at work, I would bring my work home. I would never be able to stop. There would never be a line that my families couldn't cross. I couldn't. No self-care for me means I'm giving my everything to them. So I think it's about finding the healthy balance. And because a church is seen as like, more spiritual, that can be very hard. But I think the good thing with all jobs is for the people that are working them to find a healthy balance between the two. Because if you give all of your everything and emotions and all that to work, and you have a family and all that stuff, you don't have anything left for them when you're done.
Yes, and that's what I've struggled with in the past personally, is just the balance between not bringing my work home with me, not working on my day off, things like that. Because for me, working at a church, I know people expect things of you all the time, and they don't even necessarily respect your day off, or that you're supposed to serve them. So since you're a servant and they help pay your salary, you got to be available to them. Do you feel that way, Stephanie?
Yeah, and I think that's where like the conflict comes into play, because they're like, you serve me, and that's where you have to kind of bridge the gap between that sort of, that's where I struggle with that level of conflict, where like I need to confront the person and say, well, not really, because I have a family as well. And so those are the confrontations that I struggle with, is where I draw the line, like, actually, I have to go home at some point.
Yeah.
So
I think that it can be hard when you work for a church or when you serve at a church to make those boundaries, because there's kind of like this expectation on you. I played worship at a church for several years, and my wife served, and I just got the impression that that they have such a need. And if you're already serving, it's very easy for them to ask the person that's already serving to do more. And there's almost like this expectation on there that if you say no, you've got like an unsubmissive spirit, or you're being selfish, or I think it's unfair, definitely in some aspects, that there's a pressure that you're supposed to do that and say yes to everything. And I think that's why a lot of people that serve end up getting burned out. And you either have to say yes to everything and get burned out, or you have to be willing to set hard boundaries with people. Like Stephanie was saying, no, I don't do this. I'm going to say no. I'm not letting myself get burned out. And sometimes being able to do self-care in that kind of environment, almost people kind of look at you with a crooked eye, like, oh, well, you're supposed to be serving and sacrificing more. And it's like almost this thing where it's like they take that as a measure of your level of sacrifice, or how much you love Jesus. Like, what kind of Christian are you if you're not willing to serve more and more and more? And that was difficult to set appropriate boundaries that were respected by everyone in that environment for me.
Yeah, and that's completely understandable, and I get that. I actually have a question for Jesse and Raven, but I want to hear from Yolanda before I ask the two of you. Yolanda, what do you think? What are some situations that tend to get you in conflict more than any other? Or are there situations that tend to bring conflict to you more than others?
I'm simple. It's structure and time management. I am very hard pressed on structure and time management because I feel like time is a precious commodity, and we have very little of it. And so if there's something that I feel like is wasting my time, and if you don't take consideration of what I'm doing at a specific time, if you ask something of me, then I'm going to do it. But if you dismiss it, then that causes a conflict for me. And then on the other end, I like to have structure, because if all the guidelines are already set, if everything is laid out, then I don't have to ask questions. I don't have to do anything because I'm putting everything out there. But I've been doing better, but that's where I have the most conflict, is when there's a lack of structure, and when there's a lack of time, time management.
So go ahead.
And that's at home, that's at work, that's at personal life, it covers all the spectrum. Like there's nothing, I don't deviate from that. I've tried, but that's where, because all of that plays into my personal relationships, my work relationships, my family environment, and that's it in a nutshell. I'm fairly even keel and everything else, but you mess with my structure, you mess with my time, I'm an angry person.
So you feel like you're more of a type A person?
I did not always. I think as I had gotten older, I started respecting time. I started respecting time a little bit more, and so and start respecting structure a little bit more, because I found that if I'm more structured, then I can get more things done, and then I don't waste a lot of time doing things that I don't need to do. And so, and that helps me in a lot of areas in my life, and helps me in my finances. It's helped me in certain relationships. It helps me at work. And so I found that if I stay on that path, then I won't deviate and get off track. And because when I do find myself getting off track, when I get off track, it's just be like, I see a squirrel in a tree, I'm just gone.
So time is a big deal to you. Do you find yourself getting into conflict with people that are more type B, or not as structured type of people, more than people like yourself?
Yes, my sister.
So she's a little more type B.
We're polar opposites. She's a procrastinator. She'll wait till the very last minute. And I am just I'm like seething. I'm just seething, because I'm like, see, if this wouldn't have happened had we did this. So yeah, definitely with my sister. We're
okay. Oh, go ahead, Jesse. Were you going to say something to Yolanda?
No.
Oh,
I was going to ask a question.
Go ahead.
Is your like the artist type, very like creative?
Yes. Somewhat. I used to be, just somewhat.
Okay, so Jesse and Raven had a question for you. You talked about being able to compartmentalize, basically, because I know that's kind of what you mentioned more on purpose, Raven, and Jesse, I think you did it without realizing you or meaning to do it. Maybe you did, but give some tips to those of us that have not been as great at compartmentalizing. Help those of us that have had some struggles with that in the past to do that. Maybe give us some tips on how you do that.
Um, this is gonna be rough for me because I think mine is a lot about just who I am
Okay.
personally, and what I like to do. I think I have a bottom line with certain stuff. Like there's certain stuff I am gonna do that I might do, and certain stuff that I'm just not gonna allow to happen. But I also come from a very spiritual background. My mom is an evangelist. I grew up in church. I was in every choir. I was there every time the doors open, Tuesday, Wednesday, Sunday. Now to the point where it's rare if I ever go in, I'll stream live if I do anything. But growing up, I had to learn how to distinguish between what, at a very young age, what serving meant and what trying to be somebody's savior meant. So even though you're serving in a church or you're at, you're a pastor, you're a minister, you are supposed to be there for people, but you're not their savior. So if there's something that you can't do, it's okay to say no. Or if you're spread too thin, it's okay to say, okay, I can't do that. I need some time for myself, or vice versa. So people do put you on a very high pedestal when you are in leadership positions at church, and that's just something that comes with it. But I think that when you set those boundaries with them and tell them, this is my off day, or don't answer the phone, or even when it comes down to separating things, like don't give your personal number, get a work cell, and they don't have your personal cell. So even if they try to call you on your off day, they won't get you. But I come from a very small church where we knew where our pastor lived and all that, so we could just drive up to his house. So that might not help either. But I'm also really, really big on self-care. I have to, and it's terrible because my self-care is shopping, so I created a bad habit. But I have to do the little small things for myself that mean a lot to me, whether it's getting my hair done or getting my nails done or whatever, because taking people's children can be very traumatic. And people thinking that that's your number one goal as soon as they see you can be even worse, because that causes conflict as soon as you meet somebody and you don't know them
Yeah.
from Adam. You're just like, okay, I never said anything about taking your kids, but you're yelling at me. So that's how we're gonna start. That's how we'll start this situation. So self-care, um, separating work from home, and I learned a long time ago when I was in counseling that no is a complete sentence. And ever since I learned that, I've been doing pretty well with it. I think some people, if they really knew me before, and I used to do all these things for them and be available for them all the time, and I would never tell them no. Once I learned that, I was shallow and mean, and I didn't, care about them anymore and all that. But that's fine. I I had to learn that people are gonna have, opinions about me that may or may not be true. But if I'm not healthy, I can't be my best self. I can't give my children that I have everything I need for them. I can't evaluate their situations correctly, and I'll be out here stressed out. When I was in college, my senior year, I had 3 jobs. I was in counseling. I was trying to graduate. I was just doing a whole lot, and I almost didn't make it. So I had to do some very stiff readjustment and just learn how to say no, basically.
Okay. Yeah, those are good. Um, I like self-care. That is something that I have struggled with and am not good at. And I don't know about you, Stephanie, but I feel like in a church that can be difficult. Je- uh, Jesse, what about you? You talked about separating work from home, and you used the term soulless. That was a fun
Maybe
term.
that was a little extreme. I just as far as feelings and stuff go, I've learned how to separate those things. I think that for me, it was a matter of survival, learning how to do that. Because I'm a very emotional person. I think that to an unhealthy extreme where I think I had an anxiety disorder when I was a kid, and a lot of it had to do with like obsessive thoughts and things like that. And so learning how to understand when those are a detriment and learning how to not let those things affect me as much was like a matter of personal survival for me. You know what I mean? To be able to have healthy relationships, and for me to just, you know, learn how to find happiness or not be burdened all the time by emotional stuff that's just going on in my head. So to me, I do it because I have to. You know, I have to learn to understand, like, there's certain situations that have nothing to do with emotion. XYZ has to get done. There's a process. No one needs to have feelings about it. I think that in some of those situations, feelings hinder that stuff. It makes it more difficult. And I don't necessarily think I'm healthy in that way. Like, I don't really think I'd be giving you guys good advice to, like, you know, handle things the way that I handle it. Um, but there's a lot of situations where I feel like emotions or feelings for me are a detriment. They hinder my ability to effectively deal with a situation. And I don't mean to make it sound like they don't matter, or that I don't matter, you know, because feelings do matter. People matters, you know, what matters to people matters. But there's a lot of stuff that I deal with that, to me, my feelings get in the way of me just getting things done. And so that's where, you know, me saying soulless, like, maybe that was a little harsh, but I mean, like, I separate, I feel like I have to make a conscious effort to separate the way that I feel about things, some things, from my ability to accomplish it. And that's just a pattern. I've gotten good at doing that at work, and I think that I'm more effective that way. And there's some things I just have to be like, this is a non-emotional issue. There's no reason for anyone to have emotions about it. It just needs to get done.
Okay. Anybody have any questions about that, or anybody want to say anything about that?
Well, I would like to share that, you know, I do understand that, you know, sometimes we do have to detach from certain situations, because if there isn't going to be a resolution, then you do have to detach yourself from it, because then you get way too involved in trying to resolve something that really doesn't have a resolution. And so you have this continuum of constantly talking and going back and forth for no reason. And I also think that, you know, it's often difficult to I guess we do allow our emotions to get in the way of actually making real decisions. I know sometimes I do. When I know what I want, but sometimes what I want, it may not be the best thing, but I'm so bent on getting what I want done. And so, but not looking at the situation in totality, because maybe what I want to get done may not be the best idea. But at that point, I'm not listening, because I know what I want to get done. And so I think that if we get in situations like that, we can kind of, you know, take a step back and just, you know, just be a little bit open. And I thought about something that Raven had said about I can't what did she say? Because I've been over here thinking about it. Not taking your work home, and self-care. Well, definitely about self-care. One of the things that I do when I get to work is I have a little a dry erase board at work, and there might be something that's going on at work. Somebody will say something. If somebody says something negative, I'll counter it by putting something positive on my board. And so, and I always have it visible for everybody to walk by and see, just to give them, a talking point. Or they'll ask the question, well, why did you put that there? And then I'll elaborate. So it kind of helps it helps me, it helps them to kind of help the day get a little bit smoother, because when you work sometimes when you work in a certain environment, it can be a very.
Yolanda? Hey, Yolanda? Did you all lose Yolanda?
Yeah.
Yolanda, you're losing. we lost you. Hello. Okay. So we lost Yolanda for a second. We'll have to get back.
Hello?
Yolanda, we lost you. You were
I
free.
know I have no idea what happened.
Yeah, it said your bandwidth was running low on my screen, and you just froze up.
Oh my God.
You
That was
froze up
weird.
and we all lost you. So.
Okay.
So sorry. Repeat kind of what you were saying.
Okay. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. But because I kind of got lost in my own thoughts. But basically what I was saying is the whole idea of self-care is something that, you know, you definitely have to have that especially when involved, when you want to separate your life from your work life or any other aspect of your life, because at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you're a whole person when you're dealing with other people.
Yeah, self-care is something that I have noticed that I feel like a lot of it has been said a lot, and I know it's something that's been frequent in a lot of our classes, and I think that's a really good tip. It just in general is self-care, but I think it's a good one for kind of working on conflict, and it seems to be a pretty good, a pretty common theme. I've also seen kind of setting some boundaries as something that has been a common theme for us when dealing with this topic is setting healthy boundaries with people. And I know that's one I've struggled with in the past and really am kind of recovering from now and paying the price for not doing that earlier in my career. But Yolanda, I love that tip about writing something on the whiteboard that counters that. I think that is a super cool tip, and I am going to use that actually in the future. So good job. Thank you. That's a really good one. Does anybody have any, before we move on, do you guys have any questions or anything else to say on this? Okay, so now that we kind of have some idea of situations that give us some of the origins of our counseling or our conflict, now that we have some of the origins of that, let's talk about situations in which we have conflict ourselves. So different situations are going to trigger conflict in all of us. And I want to hear about a time you feel like you have experienced conflict with someone else and you handled it well, and a time where you feel like you handled it poorly.
I'll start. There was a situation where one of my friends, she wanted me to talk to. She wanted me to be one of her what you call those people, like almost like a liaison. And I said, okay, I'll do that. I'll speak on your behalf. And when the time came, I told her that, let me know what it is you would like for me to address. And, I kept asking her and I kept asking her, and she waited to the last minute to where I couldn't do it when I needed to, because something at work came up, and so that took precedence over me doing what she needed me to do. And so I wasn't doing it at the time she needed me to do it. So she got upset. And so she went on to rant about, well, you haven't done this. I'm like, I haven't done this, and I haven't done that, and that, and just berating me. And I didn't get upset. I said, right now you're very upset. This is not coming from a loving place, I said, we need to have this conversation later. I said, but so I hung up the phone, and then she didn't call back. She started texting, and she was talking about I was treating her like a child because I was treating her like a child because I didn't want to address the issue. And it wasn't the fact that I didn't want to address the issue. It was because at that point she was so upset that she couldn't receive anything that I was saying.
Okay.
So at that point I was like, well, right now we really can't have this conversation because it's not going to be productive. And she said a whole slew of things, and we stopped communicating for almost a year. And then she reached back out to me, and she said something that I really couldn't receive it, because she said she did not trust me. And I couldn't understand why you didn't trust me when I've never showed you reasons not to trust me. And I asked her to outline that. And she compared me to her other friends. Now, these other friends are from a similar culture, but I'm not from that same culture. So therefore, they think more alike than I do. And I tried to help her understand that, we're not always gonna think in the same manner, but I'm always gonna respect you. But you have to meet me halfway. And she couldn't understand that until this day. We talk, but I have very strong reservations with getting really close with her, because when you don't trust somebody, that's difficult. When somebody doesn't trust you, when you haven't given them any reason not to trust you, that's tough.
Yeah. So you felt like you handled that situation? Do you feel like you handled that situation well?
I think I handled it well. I just at least I thought I handled it well. If I didn't, then by all means, I'd love for some suggestions. But to me, I thought I handled it well, because I didn't.
We lost her again. Okay, let me clarify the question. I want an either or as far as the situation. I did not clarify it as well. A situation where either you handled conflict well or you handled it poorly, because we're going to kind of follow up and talk about some of those things. Yolanda, we lost you again.
Yeah, no, I don't understand what's happening.
So you said you felt like you handled that well, and she clearly did not feel like you handled that well.
Correct.
This seems to have, I'm seeing with what you said about what gets you into conflict with people. You talked about wasting time, and you talked about time is important. Do you feel like this situation had to do with that?
It did, because I was at work when I was trying to help her, and she knew that I was working. And so if you want me to do something while I'm working, if I've set aside some time to do it while I'm at work, then please take that into consideration, because I do have other things that I have to work on. And I told her that I had a meeting at a specific time and that I had to be at that meeting. And she clearly did. She clearly did not acknowledge the fact that I had a meeting. And so she wanted me to stop what I was about to do and take care of that issue. Well, I told her that this is time frame that I can do it. I couldn't deviate from that, because my job was more important. Because I have to work.
Yeah.
And so that was the main issue.
So if you could teach the group, since you feel like you handled that well, and I would agree, if you could teach the group one thing about that situation, what would it be?
I guess for me, I guess the point that I felt where I did well was when I noticed that when I noticed that she was very, very upset, and that there wasn't going to be a resolution, and I wanted to well, you know, let me give that some thought, because I'm like, no, I still stand firm on that.
We can come
Yeah,
back.
I still, you know, I'm sorry.
I do like one thing that you said, though, and one of the things that you've said that actually I found helpful as well is taking some time. Like, I know you said that you guys kind of you hung up the phone with her and you said, I can't have this conversation right now. I actually think that's a really good suggestion, because sometimes not handling it when it happens, giving yourself a little bit of time to distance from it, actually is very helpful. So I'll come back to you in a minute, because I want to make sure, kind of keep us on track. So I'll come back to you, Yolanda. Somebody else, what is a situation that you had conflict with somebody and you felt like you either did well or you did poorly?
I think practically every single interaction with my ex-husband goes poorly.
Okay.
It deteriorates very, very quickly. It starts with like meeting times or when procedural things, and then it turns very quickly into like a pointing fingers thing, almost immediately. And so I did once what Yolanda did, and I just call every single time. I'm like, we're not doing this. You can call me when it's business.
Okay, so that was my next question, is what do you feel like will help you in the future with those situations?
Yeah, I mean, every time it turns into like a corner, that's my standard go-to. I'm like,
okay,
we're not doing this. When it's business, we'll start again.
Okay, and have you found that helpful? Has that kind of resolved some of those issues, or does it at least like take the conflict down a little bit?
It completely angers him, but it puts me in control of like my emotional state, and kind of puts me back into the driver's seat of not escalating the fight and participating into conflict. So it at least keeps me in status quo, so that I can just be like, nope, I'm not participating in this.
Does he struggle with that when you do that? Does he have a hard time and like try to text you and stuff?
Yep. Because he wants to engage and like just keep going and going. Like he loves it. And
well, I think there are some people that feel like conflict needs to be resolved immediately. And Yolanda, that's why I loved your tip about like not necessarily having to handle it there, because so many people feel like conflict's got to be handled like that, and you've got to, work it all out right here, right now. Let's go. And it's just most of the time it's not that urgent. And so I think that's a really good tip. And yeah, Stephanie, I think it sounds like that at least helps you have a peace of mind.
Yep.
For sure.
Yep.
Anybody else? Conflict, a situation where you had conflict with someone and you felt like you handled it well or poorly?
Recent one for me was with my wife, and it went actually really well, because I think sometimes I handle things the way that Stephanie said, where it takes me a while to process. Like if I'm really gonna look at the situation and like really understand myself, like where I'm coming from, like if I got hurt or if I got upset, what exactly about the situation that didn't I like, and then I can understand myself enough, and then I can figure out, hey, I need to talk about this. Hey, I need to chill out. It's not that big of a deal. Maybe I took the person the wrong way. So we got into a conversation. She had said something that I didn't like. I waited about a week, and then I think that I handled it correctly because I brought it up on my own. Like I didn't wait until we were in a fight about something else, and then oh yeah, and then last week, you maybe pissed me off because you said X, Y, or Z. I actually brought it up myself in a mature way. I didn't get angry, didn't communicate really, any anger or anxiety or anything. It was just like, hey, last week you said this. This is the way that it made me feel. Is that what you meant? And then we had, a short conversation about it, and it was over. And that's not very typical for us, because if we talk about it in the moment, sometimes you start having emotional reactions. And stuff like that. And it was a really nice change because it was, I was able to be really honest. She acknowledged the way that I felt, and, we had like a real conversation about it. And I don't think that that sort of thing happens as much as it should. But that was a really good, that was a really good ending to a situation that could have been like, a really big fight or something that turned into a situation where we're both like, hurting each other, by saying other stuff. So I would say that's one of my situations that could have been really bad, but ended up well.
Yeah, that sounds like it could have very easily gone poorly.
Yeah.
What do you feel like you could teach everybody else from that situation, or what tip do you have that you could share because you felt like you did well?
For me, I did like the homework for me, like, cause if I'm going to go talk to somebody about my feelings or about a situation that happened, I think that, like for me, I need to do a little bit of homework on there. I need to understand myself, take a minute to ask myself, like, well, did you take that the wrong way? Did they mean it that way? Are you the one that's overreacting, maybe because of who it came from or the circumstance that you were in? And I need to do some processing on my own end before I go into a situation that could result in conflict, because because I think that that's one problem that we used to have, is that I'm not a quick processor. My wife is. She's a very quick processor. And she's a good communicator. I'm not. Like, I'm an emotional communicator, and we would get in fights a lot because I don't really know what I want or what I think. And so I would use the occasion of us talking about it as like a sounding board for me to process what's going on with me. And that would be really frustrating for her because she's like, well, you don't know what you want. You don't know what you think. Like, you're confusing me, because I'm bouncing back and forth between what I think and all this stuff. And that caused us a lot of conflict because it's not good for me to come into the situation not knowing what I want, what I think, or how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And if I try to use her to help me process it in the middle of that conflict, it just makes it 100 times worse because it's confusing for her and it's not healthy for either one of us. So for me, even though it's neither one of us like it, like, oh, well, hey, like, 7 days ago you said or did something that made me upset. That's not, I don't think that's the best way to deal with it time wise, but I think you need to give yourself time. Like, you need to allow yourself to be able to process that and then go back and talk about it afterward, because maybe you're saving yourself a whole lot of grief because the situation's going to go well. It's not going to go to a place that you don't want it to and cause a bigger problem.
Yeah.
So for me, I need to do a little bit of homework. I need to understand myself, and I can come to the conversation, with a clear mind and not confuse the person that I'm talking to.
Yeah, understanding yourself is important. I think that is a very big point, is understanding yourself. And in order to understand your conflict with other people, you got to understand you and how you operate. And I love that you were able to know yourself well enough. You took that time to say, hey, is this just a me thing, or did I really hear her say that? And you were able to address that. So that was really, really cool. We are at about 14. I do need to move us along, Raven. I'm not going to ignore you. I want to ask you the same question and come back to Yolanda, but I want to make sure we're kind of on track a little bit because we've still got to talk about some tools and stuff. So we're going to move a little bit quick. Raven, what is a situation you feel like a conflict situation you feel like you either handled well or terribly, and what do you feel like you can teach us from that?
I have one where I feel like I handled it well, but the opposite party doesn't feel that way, probably because I ended up getting fired. But my first job out of college, I was working for a mental health association here in Memphis, and I'm sorry, I'm sniffing and sneezing and stuff. That's why I'm muted, but my allergies are kicking my butt. I had a supervisor, and the thing about this job was they only hired people with mental health diagnoses to help those who suffer from mental health diagnoses. It was like that was a requirement of the job. You had to have some form of it, or A&D or something like that, some kind of personal experience as a patient in order to work there. And I should have known then that was a red flag, because I'm good with my crazy, but not everybody is good with theirs. So I had a supervisor, and she was newer to the position. Long story short, she did a pop-up visit and came, and she gave me all these critiques and told me, okay, this is what I like to see you do more, and this is what I like to see less of, and I want you to do this and do that with the group. And I was like, okay. So she told me this in the morning time. And when we had this conversation, she didn't provide any deadlines. She didn't say, I want to see this right away. She didn't say, I want to see this by the next time we have supervision. Nothing. And she stayed there the whole day and sat through, because we had already had the group planned out for the day. She sat through everything and didn't say a word. Didn't say a peep. So 5 o'clock comes and she walks into my office with a write-up. And she was like, well, I'm going to have to write you up today because you didn't do what I asked you to do. I didn't see any of the things that I asked you to implement during group today. And I was so shocked, I think, by this write-up that I just signed it and left, because it blew my mind that she had been there all day and had ample opportunity to say, okay, this is when I want to see the changes. Or while she was sitting in group laughing and giggling, she could have said, okay, well, how about you do this and let me see you do this or whatever, but she didn't say a word. So when I got home, I processed like a lot of the stories that you all have given. I took some time to process, and I called my mom to make sure I wasn't crazy. Then I called my grandma. I was like, am I did I miss something? It's my first job. Maybe I'm not hip to what supervision is supposed to look like. And they were like, no, you're definitely not crazy. You should email her and CC her boss and let her know that you don't agree with the write-up and all this stuff. So that's what I did. And she never responded. Her immediate supervisor responded and basically told me that I was a liar and that some of the stuff that I mentioned that she taught me herself and blah, blah. And I just kind of responded to her and said, my stance doesn't change. I still don't agree with the write-up, and that was it. Didn't hear anything. A couple weeks later, this just shows you how small this company was. The CEO of the company and my boss's boss do a pop-up visit. They pull me in the office, and he begins to speak as if he is, I don't want to say my dad, because I would hate to see a dad speak to their kids that way, but you're going to listen to your supervisor and do what she tells you to do without any question. Do you understand me? And I just kind of stared at him like, I just met you. I don't even know you. For you to come in here and do you understand me to me? And I don't know if you got things twisted, but this is a working relationship. You're not my father. It's impossible, seeing as though I'm African American. You're not. So I would not expect you to be speaking to me that way. And he was like, well, I just don't appreciate the way you've been disrespectful to your supervisor. And I kept asking him, can you explain to me what disrespect you're saying so I could change it? Or can you let me know what instances of disrespect that you feel like have occurred? You won't badger her through email, is what he kept saying. And I was like, I don't recall badgering anybody. I sent 2 emails. One was to her and one was to her supervisor, who responded to me. If you would like me to ignore the emails, I can do that too. He just wasn't happy with the conversation that we had, and so he fired me. But he told me, okay, pack your stuff and go home. I said, okay. And I went to the office, packed my stuff, and I went home and I filed for unemployment, and I got it because he literally had no reason to fire me. He just, I don't know.
So what do you feel like? Do you feel like there was something you could have done better in that situation? Or do you feel like, or is there something you can teach us from that situation that you feel like you did well?
I think, well, what I learned and what I tell people about this situation is never allow anybody to treat you any kind of way. Always stand up for yourself, because if I had just been a yes woman in that moment, he probably would have continued to treat me like that for however long I would have decided to stay there, and I would have been, unhappy anyway. And always, just stand your ground, even when it's in a professional situation, because when you know you didn't do anything wrong, there's nothing you can do about the situation. I don't think I could have changed his mind. I think he came to Memphis in his head that he was going to fire me, and that's what he did. For whatever reason, I don't know.
Well, I think that's a really good tip. And I think that's something that for people that struggle with conflict, that's difficult to just not let people treat you that way. It's easy to just kind of let them beat you down and go on about your day. But I think that's a really good tip. And I agree with that. And that's something that I've struggled with. Going back to Yolanda, real quick, what is something that you felt like either you could teach us from your situation, or something you felt like you could do better in your situation?
Well, I think sometimes, well, in that particular situation, I thought that the way I could diffuse the situation was by not continuing to address the situation at that time, because it only would contribute in both of us saying things emotionally that just was not healthy for the relationship. And obviously she was still upset, and if she would have alluded that it was a trust issue and not just taking it as some form of attack, then perhaps we would have had a better outcome. But she took it as me treating her as like a child. So that came from somewhere where I have no idea. Because it's not that I was talking to her like a child. I was just telling her that we just could not have that conversation at that time, because it was just not like, it was not going to go, it was not going to go in a good favor for neither one of us, because she was getting emotionally upset, and I was getting to the point where I was getting emotionally upset, and I just wanted to just, kind of diffuse it so that we can kind of go on with our day, have some time to think about it. And I told her I'd call her tomorrow, but but that's not what she wanted to hear. And so she just continuously texts me these long, lengthy stories about what I was doing, what I wasn't doing. But I knew that I had done everything that I possibly could in that given point. Could I? Because what I felt like I shouldn't do is I shouldn't pacify her by telling her, oh, I'm at fault about all this, because I wasn't. I said, because when everything was laid out, and that I'm working, you know, let's be respectful, because if you're at work, I'm not going to call you at work. I'm going to respect that. That's your job. That's your bread and butter. That's not me calling you at work or telling you that you need to do something at work is not, that's not a part of my daily job duties. That's not in my work. That's not in my work duty. And
oh, go ahead.
So, but basically I would say that to say that just finding a way to diffuse this, to diffuse the situation, especially when you know that when right now that everybody's emotions is going to be involved and at a higher that's going to be magnified, then just de-escalate it the best way that you can, so that you can say that, so that you can be healthy. Like something similar to what Stephanie does with her ex-husband, because she understands what her limitations are. And when he gets to that limit, she removes herself from that emotionally, because that is very taxing on the self.
Yeah, so I'm hearing with that, knowing yourself and knowing your situation and knowing the other person. So I think those are definitely like some big things when it comes to conflict, because I feel like I've heard that in every single one of you guys' stories, or every single one of your examples. The things that I've kind of seen as a pattern is know yourself and know the other person and know the situation. So it seems like that those are kind of recurring, and I think those are great ways to deal with conflict. And since we talked about those things, it also sounds like, Yolanda, there were some clarity issues in your situation. It sounds like both of you kind of had some different ideas of what was going on, so there needed to be a little more clarity, maybe between both of you as to how you were thinking. But I definitely agree in the knowing yourself, and all of you have said that. So that's one awesome thing that we have kind of brought out of this. We've pulled that out, and we'll talk about that again in a few minutes when we get to application. I do want to move along pretty quick because we only have about 30 minutes left. I want to give us a couple of tools. We've talked about some of the origins of our conflict, how we feel like we're doing. We've talked about some things that we feel like we've done well or not done well. I wanted to give you guys 3 examples. We're not going to go too in depth after each one. I'll give all 3, and we'll talk for a couple of minutes about those 3. And then we do have a couple of things to discuss at the end of the session. So I'm going to move us along in that sense. So 3 tools that I was kind of thinking about as I was preparing for this week. One of them that actually our preacher here at my church is my best friend, and he and I talk a lot. One of the things that I hear him say all the time when he gets into conflict, and I've tried to kind of take this practice on myself, is using help me understand. I think that is a phrase he uses a lot. When it's the idea of, okay, say Jesse and I had conflict. Jesse, help me understand why you think that I said this, or why you believe that I said this thing. I think this is helpful because number one, it shifts the blame of the conflict. So it goes from, you said this, and this, is to, okay, maybe I'm understanding what you're saying wrong. So it's kind of assuming that the other person is saying it right, but you're lacking understanding. And so then they are not as defensive, and therefore they're like, okay, well, let me walk you through that a little bit more, which is another thing it does. It gives them the ability to process and gives them the ability to walk you through their point of view or their feelings or their thoughts. And so I found myself using this skill a lot more, and it helps you see their point of view. When you say, okay, help me understand why you feel this way, they are able to, it also places the blame a little more on the situation and not necessarily on them. And so I think, to me, that is a good way to kind of take some of the blame off of the other person. So that's one of the tools that I wanted to give us. Another one I found from the University of California, San Diego website is find points of agreement and disagreement. Even in the most crazy arguments, you can find some point of agreement and disagreement with people. You can find some baseline, even if, okay, I want this, you want this, let's start from there. Even if it's just the most basic thing is, I don't want to have a bad day and you don't want to have a bad day. So let's talk about how we can have a better day. Let's talk about how we can solve this conflict. So finding that that point of agreement is really helpful. Finding that can give you a place to start and can give you a sense of, okay, we're on the same team. We want the same thing. We're just going about it different ways. And then the other one that I found was being willing to compromise. I feel like compromise for a lot of people is almost like a bad word. Like, I feel like a lot of people feel like compromise is a cuss word. And I know that for me, I feel like it's a part of my everyday life. And I don't know if maybe, Stephanie, you feel that way working in church too. It's a part of everyday life. It's a reality of our job. There's always got to be some kind of compromise. So I feel like these three, to me, are some of the most important tools to really kind of look at that give us ways to solve conflicts. So which of those three tools, and I know there's a ton more, and we don't necessarily have time to go over every single tip and tool that people use to solve conflict, but I want to focus in on these three. What do you guys think about these three that I've given you?
Well, I definitely like the first idea. I like how it's termed because sometimes I use that method. I don't say I'm very consistent with it, but I do when I'm at an equilibrium. I try not to be say things that are more fault finding or put that person on the defensive. Because, you know, how you convey yourself to someone, and even in your tone, really shapes how that person is going to receive it, and they may not be receptive to it. So you do kind of have to do, detract from the idea of, well, this is what how can I help me, just like I'm saying, help me understand how something would be done. Or in some cases, I have to I know I have to say this at work quite often. I said, I don't quite understand how you arrived at that. Help me understand what I need to do so that I can make sure that I'm doing it correctly. Because people, one of my coworkers, she when she tells you how to do something, she already knows how to do it. And so she starts right in the middle. She doesn't give you all the information that you'll need. And so I say, show me as if I've never touched this ever. I've never touched this, so that I can understand each individual step. Because at that point, I'm less likely to make mistakes if you walk me through the whole process. And then at that point, we can move forward. But if I go, because I know when I first started, I knew certain things, and so I felt like I knew how it's supposed to be done, but I didn't understand how that company did it. And so I was like, well, that doesn't look right to me. And I know that me saying that, it kind of shaped our conversation. So I had to change how I was looking, how I was conveying myself to her.
Yeah.
So I really like that first idea.
And that's really good. Assuming that one of the things you said, it kind of came to mind too. Doing that makes people feel like you're on the same team. Like, help me understand how you did this, or help me understand how you came to that. It kind of makes you feel like you're on the same team and you just need more information. And so that's just very disarming. And I like that. I like that way of saying it. Assume I'm a beginner and don't understand this. Help me with that. That's a good way to think about that too. Anybody else? Which of those techniques do you feel like, or what do you think about those techniques?
I think like finding those points of alignment are really helpful for people like Jesse and me who are processors, to kind of give us that time to process as well, and to say like, you know, hey, we agree on these few things, so let's just start there, and, you know, give me some time to process through this, but let's just start with these few things that we agree upon, and then revisit on the things that we may not agree on, but I need to process. I need to kind of think this over and go from there. But let's just like camp out on the things that we do agree on, you know?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. I like that you kind of combined the idea of finding points of disagreement and taking some time, because you're right. For the processors, that's a little bit more difficult, and it might take some. It might take a little more time. Where you said, okay, I love that you use the term camp out on that. So it's like you're discussing it and you say, okay, wait, here's what we agree on for the next 2 days. Let's think about this. And then we'll come back together in 2 days and let's discuss some of the things we disagree on. I really love that. That's a great way to think about that.
Yeah, because there are processors like that. And most of the world are not processors, and they can like fly around all these emotions and like get to it. But the rest of us are like, I don't know what to do. And it's really stressful for us and then them who want to just get through it and, you know, and rush through it. But us processors are like, we can't do that right now. We just kind of like shut down, and we really do need that time. So
I'm a processor like that too.
Yeah.
So I understand. I understand.
I was just gonna say that I think my fiance is a processor, and I'm more of the emotional fly off the. I'm gonna say how I feel, and I'm like, this is what's going on. What are you doing? What's going on? And sometimes he just looks at me, and I can tell when he stopped listening because his face is so blank, and I'm like, Joshua, you're not listening to me. And he's saying, I'm listening. But when he finally comes to and process what I said, he was like, can you repeat that? Because I didn't hear anything you just said. And he was like, you have to stop coming into the conversation with all this stuff right away. I need time to process stuff. And that frustrates me. I'm like, what do you mean you don't know? How do you not know? We're talking about what we're talking about. I don't understand why. And he's like, I need a minute.
It's like information overload.
Yeah.
He's like a computer. His system's got to reboot. I get that. That makes sense, and that's really good. So you kind of resonate with what Stephanie was saying. You resonate with that, finding those things to agree on, but also taking some time.
I think taking time is more important for him because we'll loop and loop and loop and loop and loop until I just stop talking and he stops talking, and we sit there for a second. He's like, okay, so this is what I understand to be happening. This is what I thought happened, or whatever the case. Even when it comes down to like bills and stuff, I'll come home and I'm like, okay, this needs to be paid, this needs to be paid, this is this much, this is that much, blah blah. And Couple minutes later, he's like, what? What did you just say? I'm like, really? We just had a whole conversation about what needs to be paid and all this stuff, and he was like, I just can't do it, and it frustrates me.
Because we're on like subject one and going around it from every angle, right?
Yeah.
And then you do subject two and go around every angle, and that's time.
Yeah. I think that's really good, and that's something kind of I've heard from you and Jesse, and I agree with you. Like Yolanda, that's something that I think is in a lot of couples. Like you've got one who is more of a processor and one who can just kind of go and just like boom, 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 boom. And it can lead to some strife, especially if you don't know the other person that well, and you can really like suffer from some communication issues. And I feel like it could cause a lot of strife in a relationship if you don't know how that other person operates. So I completely, I get that for both of you. Jesse, what about you? What do you think about these things these tools that I gave?
What were the three again? The
So,
first one?
Yeah, the first one was the idea of, okay, help me understand, blank. And then kind of getting a grip on their thought processes by saying, help me understand this. And then the second one was finding kind of a base, finding a, here are some things we agree on, here are some things we don't agree on, but finding that base that you agree on to start discussing your conflict. And then the third one was talking about compromise, giving and taking, and maybe you see something from their point of view, or you say, okay, this is something we've got to, I'll give this in the argument if you give this, and kind of coming to a consensus.
Yeah, I think probably the most important one is the first one, would just be setting the tone for whatever you're talking about. Because if you get into a conflict situation where you're feeling like enemies, or you're feeling like you're against one another, I think it's going to be very hard to resolve the conflict in that way. I think that if both people understand that you're on the same team, and even though this may be a little difficult for us both to get on the same page and understand one another, as long as the tone and the intention is that like we're here in this together and we're going to work something out, I think that is probably the most important part of starting the process. And then you go through and you compromise, and you understand one another through the rest of it. But I think that that's probably the most important, is having the right tone and attitude.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I get that. And that's, again, that idea of help me understand is something that I'm trying to use more as well, because it really does make people feel like you're on their side. And it really kind of, it actually helps with number two, getting that base of things to agree on. So we are starting to wind down. We have about 18 minutes left. My clock says 4:42. And I know different time zones, it says different things. I do want to make sure that we are able to get some solid things from this. And I want to kind of wrap up what we've discussed, but I also want us to kind of, I want to give us a conclusion and talk about a couple of things. So one of the things so I hope you guys have been able to make some applications. So some things we've discussed and some things that I've heard are, number one, know yourself. Know yourself, know how you operate, know how you deal with conflict, know how you react to certain situations. Number two, know the other person. At least, and if you don't at least know the other person, know how you tend to react to that person, or people that maybe share a same ideology with that person. Know how you react to the other person, know how that person reacts. Another thing I heard that, like I said earlier, that I heard a lot was self-care. I heard self-care is a really good way to help with conflict, in the sense that if you're taking care of yourself, you tend to not be as prone to handle conflict poorly. And another one I heard that was to set boundaries. I think that one's very key, is setting boundaries, because yes, setting boundaries will get you in conflict with people, in the sense that, you know, they may not, they may think your boundaries should be different than they are, but it at least helps you and your mental health when you set boundaries, and it helps kind of define the relationship, and it helps put some boundaries on those, put some parameters on that relationship. So those are some common threads that I'm hearing. Did any of you guys hear any more common threads, or have anything else that you wanted to add to the conversation?
I think you clearly defined pretty much everything that that I know I look at when in terms of conflict and resolving, and provided some great examples of how to handle them, especially when it comes to especially when it comes to time, because I never looked at giving people time to process certain things, because my sister is similar to that. And so when listening to Stephanie and Jesse about, just giving them some time to process, I never really looked at that, because I'm like, I want to go in, I want to talk about it. I'm going to discuss it. I'm going to discuss it right now. And then sometimes I know how I have to, I was like, when I feel like I'm getting a disconnect, that's when I want to retract. By then, I've already frustrated the situation. So I appreciate you guys sharing that, because that also helps me understand where I need to kind of work on, not trying to drive that nail on down. Just kind of be a little relaxed, listen, take some, like use some of that active listening that we've been learning.
Yeah, Yolanda, you actually kind of jumped ahead to what I was going to ask next. Was what is something? Well, I had two questions, but I'll do the second one in front of the first one. What is something that you took from today? What is something that you can actively take? Maybe something you heard somebody else say, and what is something you'll take from that and use it in your daily life? Yolanda's already gone, so thank you, Yolanda, for proving my next point for me.
I would say I agree with her as far as giving people time to respond. And also, sometimes you talked a lot about not responding yourself in that exact moment. Taking some time to step away, to process for yourself, even if you're a person that can, go off of emotion, it might be better for you to sit it out for a little while and actually, review the full situation. So taking time on both sides of the conflict. Let me make sure I'm not being emotional, and let me give the other person some time to get it together to decide, how they want to handle the situation.
Yeah, that's a good, I think that's great. That's great, Raven. Anybody else? What's something you took that you personally will use from this?
I think creating stronger boundaries for me. And one of the things that Raven said was no is a complete sentence.
Yeah, that was good.
It's going to be like my mantra for the year.
Yes.
That was awesome.
Please use it, please.
Yeah, I'm going to make a t-shirt.
Yeah, I love that. If you make a t-shirt, send me one.
Okay. Make it for all churches.
Yes.
Yeah.
What about you, Jesse?
I liked what Raven said about making sure that you know when and how to appropriately defend yourself, because you need to stick up for yourself. You need to set. Then I think that goes along with setting those boundaries. And it's not a selfish thing to look out for your own interests and make sure that you're doing what you need to, because we talked a lot about self-care, but sometimes it's a fight. And I think that making time, making a conscious effort to take care of yourself can be, it's something that you have to do, and you have to make an effort. And that's gonna entail saying no to other people, maybe saying no to your bosses, or maybe even saying no to something else, like learning how to set appropriate boundaries, and just knowing what your needs are, and knowing when and how to set boundaries for that.
Yeah, and that's one thing I've learned too, Jesse, is it's easy to make excuses about self-care. Because I feel like I've done that in the past. Well, maybe when my kids are a little bit older, I can do this thing. That's kind of been my mantra for a while with self-care is maybe when my children are a little bit older, I'll be able to work out more. Or maybe when, I'm not in grad school anymore, I'll be able to do this house project that my wife wants me to do, or something like that. And so it's kind of one of those things that is easy to make excuses with, but I think you're right. And kind of the irony of that is that self-care can get you in conflict. Self-care can bring you more conflict. Like all of these things, it's kind of like a cycle. Like doing all of these things that are healthy to do gets you in more conflict, which then you have to resolve by doing these things, which then gets you in more conflict. So it's kind of this cycle. And hopefully we've kind of learned some stuff from each other in talking about these things. How do you guys feel like our session went today?
Good.
Yeah, I think it was great.
No complaints.
I think it was very informative.
Okay. Yeah, I wanted to bring some things. I do, kind of looking at my self-critical, I do wish we were able to explore a little bit more of some more tools before we ran out of time. But I know that I think we had a really good session as far as learning from each other. I think there's been a lot of things that we said that, like, I love Yolanda's kind of discovery of processors, of people that process differently or slower. Because I'm one of those people, I process slower. I have to think about all the different angles and how to respond. And I just kind of love your discovery of that and how important it is to understand those things. So I think that that's pretty cool, and that I feel like we all kind of got something from this session. So I did want to do two things. So I want to give us, we do have one thing of business to take care of. I feel like I'm running a business meeting, but one thing of business to take care of. Jessica is not in the class anymore. I talked to Dr. Burson, and she said she is no longer, Jessica Harris is no longer in the class. We assigned her a topic. Her topic was, let me find it. I think it was week 7.
Goodbye. I think it was goodbye.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, it was week 7 saying goodbye. So we need to. Sorry, I just hit my knee on my desk. We need to find someone to take over that meeting, or find someone that is willing to kind of lead. Or we could even, I know there were some things about co-leading. I think Dr. Burson had said something in, or one of the sheets said something about co-leading. So we need to figure out who's going to co-lead or who's going to lead that meeting.
I think I can lead. Idea for all of us to co-lead.
What did you? I'm sorry, both of you spoke at the same. Raven, what did you say?
I was just saying, I think it might be a good idea for all of us to co-lead, kind of like a, I don't want to say open group, but everybody come maybe with a question or something like that on the topic. So 2 people won't have the load of a whole week by themselves, or 1 person won't have the load of 2 whole weeks by themselves.
Okay, yeah, I mean, that would be kind of fun. I hopefully we will have to have someone to maybe start the meeting in the sense of like
Right.
facilitate and posting the invitation and stuff like that. But I do like that idea of everybody comes with a question to share. So
Okay.
I like that, but
Mhm.
we need someone that can do some of the work as far as like inviting people, starting the meeting, stuff like that.
We do
I can
someone,
initiate that.
Stephanie,
Oh.
you will?
well, should we do someone does the logistics of the Zoom, someone starts the meeting, someone ends the meeting, and then
I
we,
feel like that's too, I don't know. What do you guys think? Because I feel like that's a lot for
okay,
all of it. Like, I don't know. I feel like that can get too confusing.
okay.
What do you guys think?
But I think there should be one person doing the recording.
Yeah.
Because it's gonna be it'll be difficult for one person to record a portion of it, another person record. So we will have to kind of be consistent in one person recording it. Now, in terms of facilitating it, you know, everybody can kind of I guess we can kind of outline what it is that we plan on talking about, and everybody talks about that specific topic if everyone's open to that.
Yeah, and we can kind of look at how things are forming as we go along and kind of adjust as we go if you guys want to. I just maybe we bring it up now, but then kind of cover it maybe in week 3 or week 4 again, and kind of give us a little more time to think about it, us processors.
Yeah.
A little more time to process how we want to do that instead of deciding now.
Okay.
I also wanted to just reminder of a couple of things. Yolanda, it has said multiple times in my on my screen that your bandwidth is running low, and you've been kind of
Yes.
a couple of times.
Oh, I'm definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna work on that next week.
Yeah, we need to work on that. Another thing, those of us that do not have Pro, I don't have Pro. Raven said she doesn't have Pro. Stephanie, I don't know if you have Pro, because I think you and I got the pop-up at the same time. I got a pop-up that basically said Zoom has gifted me free and taken the time limit off our meeting. So
that happened to me too.
Yeah, so those of us that don't have Pro need to work on fixing our accounts so that we have Pro. So
for the subsequent weeks and meetings, like everything that we posted was in the week 1 group, and I don't see that on the other weeks. Like, I don't think the group forum is on week 2, week 3, or week 4. So are we going to continue to post all this stuff in the week 1 group forum, or what?
I was thinking we could do that, or we could do I was thinking we could also do it questions to instructor, because that kind of that could serve that purpose. Of course, then Dr. Burson would see it, but I don't think that matters. We also could just private. I'm sorry, my nose is itching. My allergies are getting me too. We could do private discussion or the private forum and just copy each one, and that might be a little bit of a pain. But as far as I've operated this week, I was still doing it in week 1. Maybe we need to reach out to Dr. Burson and say, hey, could you make it where every single week we can get in the forum so that we don't have to click back to week 1 and keep doing that.
So as for right now, should we just post it in week 1? That way everybody knows where the next link is going to be.
I would say let's do that until we can figure it out otherwise.
Okay.
So go ahead. What were you going to say?
Well, I was going to say that in week 2, when you look at the top, there's the a join meeting. So I think it would probably be in our best interest to ask the professor, you know, what does that mean? Are we able to use that? Because I feel like it's there for a reason, but when you click on it, nothing happens. So I don't know if it's an action.
Yeah.
Zoom.
So I can reach out to her.
Okay.
If you guys are okay with that.
That's cool.
Sure.
Zoom has some very clunky features about it, I've noticed, and it's not, kind of like Yolanda was saying earlier, it's not the most user friendly. So we may have to kind of work our way around some of these things and figure it out. A couple of reminders, topic for week 2. Next week, Yolanda is on as our group leader. She's going to be talking about getting older, changes in body and mind. So be prepared to come and discuss that, have something to add to the conversation as per our rules. Don't forget to fill out the CNC forms as well as the peer review forms that are there as assignments. And I think we need to try to have those in 24 hours, I think is what it said, after we meet.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
I will take the recording and get it within 24 hours to our professor. So let's try to get all those things in by 24 hours because, you know, we all get graded together. And so I want to make sure we all have a good grade on this. So anybody have anything else like business wise that we need to discuss before we go?
I have a question about the CLC form. I was under the impression that the group leader would just submit that
Yes.
form, or am I wrong?
I'm turning it in. So there's one form that everybody fills out. I think it's the peer
The
review.
peer review, yeah, I think
It's the
so.
peer review. I fill out, the group leader every week fills out the CNC form, and I only fill out, from what I understand, the top right corner of it.
I think so.
Mhm.
And I mean, that gets a little confusing, but if there are other questions or if there needs to be clarity, let's keep looking at the forum tonight in case somebody's struggling with it, or in case we're kind of looking at it and see some issues with it. Let's keep looking at the forum so we can help each other. I love this class because I love the collaborative effort within it. I love that. It helps me process. So anything else business-wise? Thank you for bringing that up, Raven. Anything else business-wise we need to take care of?
Not at this time. Not that I can think of. Guys.
Okay. I'm going to try to get pro.
I mean,
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, and are you gonna be able to download it and send everyone the link so we can kind of go through and look and just revisit it a couple of times, or?
We'll see. I'm going to do my best to do that. I assume if I can send it to our professor, I can send it to you guys as well. Like I said, you've used Zoom before, Yolanda. I never did. I didn't do that in my counseling skills class. So I know it's recording because I see the little recording thing. I'm not 100% sure how to do that, but I'm figuring it out. I will figure it out.
Oh, if you
Got
want to, you
24
can give me a
hours.
call and if you want to, you can give me a call after this meeting, and I can give you some tips, because once you record it, it's gonna go onto your desktop. I mean,
Okay.
Somewhere in your CPU, so
Somewhere.
I can show you from there.
That's the key, is somewhere. Okay, well,
Right.
thank you guys for your participation. I appreciated it. I hope you guys all got something. This was my first time leading a group, so I hope we at least got some clarity, and hope we got some things out of it. And I appreciate all you guys, and I really enjoyed meeting with you guys. I think that's it. Next Sunday, same place, same time.
All right, you guys have a good week.
Okay, Yolanda, I may be giving you a call after this.
Okay. All right. That's fine.
Okay, talk to you guys later.
Okay. Have a good evening.
You too. Bye.